recording is up and we can begin.
Cheers.
So yeah, just looking back at like our last notes, it looks like on Zarya particularly, we were looking at kind of the main things being our positioning as number 1, then number 2 is ultimate usage, and then number 3 is bubble usage. So we'll see how that is looking now that it's been like a month.
Yeah. It's been a little bit.
Defend objective A.
Okay, right now we just want to make sure we're going for an early bubble. So specifically when we see like this is a really easy time that we can go for a bubble, because that means that we start charging it like it. No matter where they go, the fight is not going to start immediately, because if they go left, then they have to walk all the way around here, which gives you time to charge an entire other bubble. They go right, again, they have to walk a long distance, and you have time to charge another bubble by the time you get close to each other. So right now we just want to be getting our energy up, so therefore we should be trying to soak up all this damage that Pharah is putting out, but it's just a little bit delayed, right? Like we use it again, like we've talked about this in the past when we went over bubble usages. We bubble when we see damage that's coming in. Here we see damages coming in, right? We look at the Pharah, right? The Pharah shooting in some shots. We see Sigma shooting in shots, like right there, Pharah shot, there, Pharah shot, Sigma shooting in shots, Pharah just shot again. Right, you have a Kree shooting up here too, right? There's a lot of damage just zooming past our head, but we're not soaking any of that up, so we're just really delayed. And then when we do go for bubbles, we do it when they stop shooting at us, right? When they've no longer shot in this direction. So we want to make sure that we're bubbling when we see damages coming in. A little bit earlier here, when you are bubbling, just put yourself at the very edge of the podium here so that we can soak up as much damage as we can. All right, make yourselves an easy target. All right. Again, make sure that we're bubbling, like we're paying attention to where the enemy team is. Right now, they're not in range to hit Hog with any shots. Wait until they can actually see Hog. Like if we just go to their perspective real quick, we bubble Hog, and actually he ran out, right? But even like from their perspective a second ago, like they couldn't even really see him. Like maybe 1 or 2 characters could. Okay, that one was pretty deep. I like the timing of that one because they had a bunch of people looking at us. They just didn't end up shooting at us. But the other thing was that we ended up backing up a little too early. We still had like half of our bubble left, and you can see here that we just end up walking backwards while we still have bubble available. When we want to be staying in here as long as possible, this does 2 things. Gives them more time to be shooting at our bubble, as well as just providing extra tanking, right? That means that our team is getting the support of us being in the front line for a longer period of time, which is going to be really good, especially since we don't have a main tank on our team right now. So we bubble, and then we back up with it. So now we have used 2 rounds of bubbles that have gotten absolutely no value, right? So number 1 thing we're looking at right now is bubble usage. Right, that's unfortunate. We got booped off. Alright, bubble. I think you can tell what was wrong with that one.
That's alright.
Alright, that was a good bubble. The problem is that we just play too aggressive, right? Gotta pay attention to the fact that we do not have a main tank, right? So first thing we're looking at each game is our team and the enemy team. We do not have a Reinhardt, we do not have a Sigma, we do not have any shields. We don't have any main tank, right? We're running Hog and Zarya, who are 2 off-tank characters. Therefore, we are incapable of playing super aggressive because we don't have a main line front tank, right? So that means that here in the scenario, we just have to be playing a little bit more passive, make sure that we're using cover correctly, we're not walking out into the open, and that we're not running really far ahead of our team. So like you see how far back your team is in comparison to you, and now this means that we're probably going to end up dying. So we ran ahead of our team, we got too aggressive, and even though that was a decently good bubble, it just meant that we didn't get value out of it. Right, the difference between that one and maybe doing it back over here is if once your bubble runs out over here, all you have to do is just move around the corner, and then now they can't see you, right? So this gives you a little bit better positioning and cover usage, and you can kind of keep them at this choke point. So this allows you to be aggressive with your bubble and then back out instantly. Here, if you get aggressive with your bubble, there's no backing out, right? If they break it or it goes down, you're dead. which is what happens.
Yep.
So looking like a lot of the same stuff as last time. Yeah, like they were doing that jump tech to get back faster. Instead of, you don't have to reload in between all of them. Just like go shoot
Yeah.
as soon as you hit the floor. You should just, you don't have to. Also, you add in kind of a delay where you're kind of delayed with it. Just you'll be going at a faster pace if you're just right click, hit the floor, right click, hit the floor, right click, hit the floor. Right, you're doing it pretty much as soon as you landing. You don't might not want to go below half HP because then you don't actually regenerate all of it. And right about now, you should start letting your health regenerate and not right clicking anymore. But okay, so that's good. We do let our health regen, so that's really, really nice as well. Good bubble. Good bubbles. Alright, so now some good bubbles. Though we end up not using our own personal bubble to move to cover, what we should probably be doing here is bubble as we walk to the left, right? This allows us to get in here, and then now we're in a pretty good position, right? Where we don't, look at their team comp. If we're in here, the only person who can see us is the ball and the Mercy who's not even shooting at us. So not really going to be taking a whole lot of damage, right? This gives a lot better positioning and
Yep.
allows us to group up with our team, right? But being out here means that literally every single person on their team can shoot at us. Widowmaker, right? BAP, Kree, Sigma, right? So we're just kind of sitting out in the open too long here, and then let's see if that results in... And then we back up this way. Okay. Now we rotate in. Good bubbles. Just the rotation was a tiny bit delayed. Make sure that we're not getting too aggressive here. We do have an entire tick to go, so don't feel pressured to touch point until you're at the very, very last second, right?
Yeah.
I don't know I can't recall off the top of my head how long a single tick takes, but I would assume it's something like 5 seconds for one single tick. So you're gonna have some time to chill and wait for bubbles, right? If we waited an extra 4 seconds from now, we would be, instead of coming out with 7 on each of our bubbles or 6 on each of our bubbles, we'd be coming out with 3 on our bubble, right? So we'd be getting our bubble much faster. We'd be able to get the health pack. We could stay in here and shoot from cover, right? We just have a lot more survivability than if we just instantly run the card, so be patient. Right. Well, at least that's good that he used Flux there. Alright, so coming up. Good bubble. Alright, bubbles are looking slightly better now. They just took us a moment to get back up. So again, just looking for the consistency. So like bubbles at the very beginning, not really looking too good. Bubbles now looking a little bit better. So we just want to make sure that we are keeping them consistent and getting value out of them all the time, not just some of the time. All right, now we're also probably going to be looking for our ult here, right? So on the enemy team, we have to make sure we're thinking about the Baptiste lamp and thinking about killing that. And then on our team, we can be thinking, okay, what can we combo with this, right? Now, of course, I totally forgot that at the beginning you said you weren't talking too much in team chat, so that's not really maybe something we should be thinking too much about on our team, but we could still be thinking about BAP lamp, because if we know that they have lamp, we should look to focus it down ourselves, right? To make sure it's dead when we grab. Alright, good awareness. Nice reaction times. Alright, 1 second, I'm taking a look here.
I'm not 100% sure why I went down there.
Alright. So in between fights, we should be looking to maintain our energy. So rather than back up I'm pretty sure that was something we talked about, right? Maintaining energy.
Yeah, I struggle with that a little bit. Yeah.
Yep. So just make sure we're constantly giving ourselves the reminder. It seems like with a lot with something like that, right? I would maybe assume that we also talked about like autopiloting and making sure we're focusing while we play.
Yeah.
Right. So how we focus on making sure we're doing something consistently, right? Is we just make sure we're giving ourselves a constant reminder while we're playing, right? And if you give yourself a constant reminder, it starts to form as you put focus into it, and then you'll start to notice that you'll remember to do it more. And when you remember to do it more, you will start to form that as a habit, and therefore that will they'll become a habit that you're consistently do, and you'll no longer have to focus on it, right? So here, just want to make sure that you're really, really putting attention into making sure we're doing this in between fights, right? Because instead of being all the way back on point, we should probably be something more like where Genji is at, so that they can peek a little bit, shoot at us. Like we can soak up some Junkrat. Like look at Junkrat, he's spamming in a little bit. We can soak up some spam damage with our bubbles, and then just back out to point, right? And then now we've gotten an additional, like, we're coming into the fight with an additional like 40 energy, right? Because here we're just going to deteriorate down to like nothing.
Yep.
Again, make sure we're bubbling when the enemy team can see and shoot at our players. Couple of our bubbles aren't doing that, right? We're doing it when they're really, really far away and not shooting at us. That bubbles are good though. So again, it's just very inconsistent. It's like half the time it's fine, half the time it's not.
Yeah.
So we want to make it to where it's like 90% of the time it's good. Try to watch for when your Sigma is shielding, as that's a time where you do not want to be bubbling, right? Because that does two things. First off, it just pretty much wastes your bubble because you're overlapping abilities, and it means that you get less tanking. But it also means you get 0 energy, because when this blocks all the damage, he's not getting shot at, right? So try to make sure you're paying attention to when he's putting his shield up, so that you can look to bubble him. It's the same thing as on like a Reinhardt. You want to pay attention to when does he look like he's gonna get aggressive, so that I can bubble him then. You don't want to bubble him when he looks like he's gonna hard shield, or when he looks like he's backing out, right? You want to bubble him when he's going in. Oh, nice. I like that. Walking into the mines. Want to look to use our grav here. Very, very nice. Using it decently early, though potentially make sure... But potentially what we could have done there is just look to use this slightly earlier. Like, for example, here with the mines, keep in mind that though this is a really good play, we also don't have to be staring at the mines while we do it, right? And then this opens up just a slight bit more time to be looking to line it up. Here we now should be looking for it, and we maybe see like Junkrat and Sigma next to each other, and we should be looking for it here. Alright, so decently early. Just make sure you're looking to use it as early as possible. So really, really good there. Good bubble on the Genji, really nice, and well won fight. Terrible res on their part, more energy and stuff for you. Okay, awareness is looking pretty good. I haven't seen many awareness issues so far. Maybe there's just make sure you're looking, when you see a ball and you're like, oh, where'd ball go? Look up in the air, because, you can grapple up.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, most things so far have been positional and bubble usage, and then like some decision-making things. Make sure you're using your personal bubble on somebody there when you're being floated up and ulted. Right here we had us, we have Baptiste, and we have Genji, right? And we're a little bit slow to react here with our personal bubble, and then we end up missing him. And then there's also the Genji who's still in it. So just make sure we're reacting a little bit faster and looking to use our bubble on someone who gets fluxed. So unfortunate. Let's see. I don't think there's anything we could have done here.
I think I was just trying to get out of the way and get to the spawn room.
Hey, nice bubble. We use our... Alright. Mechanics looking alright. No real problems there. So far, the only major mistake we've made was on first point when we messed up with our positioning, kind of went in fed.
Yeah.
But just a lot of consistency things have been an issue. Yep. I think in the middle of fights we do like is where we really thrive with our bubbles, is where when stuff's happening, but where we really need to focus in on our bubble usage is in between fights. So first off, just making sure we're maintaining energy in between fights, but then also at the very beginning where we're in a poke phase, right? At this point right now, we are in the poke phase where the fight hasn't really started yet. You're not neither team is brawling. You're just kind of poking at each other. You're doing a little bit of spam damage. This is where we really seem to be struggling with our bubbles, and we just want to make sure that we're putting a lot of effort into them at these points and times, and we're using them when we see people are seeing us and shooting at us, right? We're not using them just randomly when neither of those things are a factor.
I think what I struggle is like just gauging like the exact amount of energy, like, and making a decision whether or not it's worth using a bubble or not, if you know what I mean. Like
the exact amount of energy, you said?
Oh, like so when people are poking, like I think where I have a bit of trouble is deciding, is it enough damage? Because if it's just like the baby diva there that was shooting at me or whatever, like it's not really worth a bubble, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
I guess so.
most times it's going to be dependent on the damage source or how many people. If you have 6 people staring at someone and shooting at somebody, or even 4 people, 3 people, it's not going to matter how much damage those characters do. It could be a Mercy and a Baby Diva, yet you're still going to get energy from it if you have multiple people looking and shooting at it. So the first major one is making sure that it's just multiple people, as multiple people will be the easiest way to tell whether or not you're going to get energy out of it. If you have three or more people shooting at you, it doesn't matter who it is, how much damage they're doing, they're going to shoot you and do damage. The other thing then is just comes down to certain characters will do some more damage than others, and a lot of times you don't want to bubble for skill shot characters. So for example, like a bubbling for like if it's just Ashe shooting at you, that's not really going to do anything, right? Because Ashe can just very easily stop shooting at you, and basically she has a skill shot, right? So she can be very direct and particular with it, and it's basically it's very easy for an Ashe to just not shoot at your bubble. But in comparison, they had a Junkrat and a Pharah earlier, right? That's a little bit different. A Junkrat and a Pharah is super easy to get a bubble off of because it's very high burst damage. That's also a projectile, so it's easy to tell where it's going and it's easy to jump into. They can't, once they've shot the shot, they can't stop it from going to you, right? So it's all situational. You have to figure out, what damage can we eat up. With their hit scan, we're not going to get a ton, but if you're standing down in the frontal corridor where you have 1, 2, 3, 4 people looking at you, you're going to be getting quite a bit of energy from that, right? Here, how do we get in this position? It looks like we're a little too close to them.
I think I went for the killing. Did I go for the killing signal?
So, pooped us. Okay, so we went for the Mercy, baited us in.
I went for the
Make sure identifying the fact that here it looks like we're unaware of what our team's up to is the big thing, because if we look at our team, we don't have any team support at the moment. And because we don't have any team support, we need to be identifying that and looking to, instead of just sitting on top of her, what we can look to do is just maybe get us be ready, be shooting at her right here and just be backing up as soon as she gets off the res, because we're probably not going to be able to kill her with the amount of energy we have. Right? Instead we get aggressive and we push forwards there, and then now we're no bubble, super far forward. So this has been the second time now where this is bad positioning and getting too aggressive with our bubbles has led to us dying, when this time we actually had our ultimate as well, right? So that was another big oopsie, where we just want to make sure we're paying attention to what our team's up to and making sure we're not getting too aggressive, especially again when we don't have when we don't have a main tank with us, right? We as Zarya, we're not really we're not a main tank ourselves, so we can't be sitting on the front line like that. Right. Giving a second to get our team back. toss grab before you die. Right, you just want to make sure we're using your ultimates, as well as if you know that you're going to get on a slow character like Zarya, you might need to go a little bit faster here because you know you're going to be contested with people trying to body block you and shoot at you. So just look to run out there as fast as possible. And on top of that, you have people waiting on you. Like you look around and Genji's waiting on you to push forward. So he could probably touch here. He just needs you to push forward. So you could be coming out here with you grab Genji blading. That could potentially be big, massive, getting picks and then him stalling point. But here we just are a little bit delayed with it. On top of that, when we're walking out here, we could maybe like bubble our Genji if we could. We just want to make sure we're using a grab here, right, on anything before we die.
Complete. Together. Attackers
Right.
incoming.
So again, no main tank. Looking to play relatively slow. Can't play super aggressive because they're just going to roll us like that.
Ready for battle.
Pretty good. We've identified that they're on a Junkrat, therefore we might not want to go left side, but if we're not in team chat to communicate that, we don't really have a way to stop our team from going left side, so if our entire team goes left side, we kind of have to go left side. That's one of the disadvantages of not talking in team chat, because, you know, if we see, hey, they're on a Junkrat, we might be able to go, hey, let's go right side, which should probably be the better decision, because Junkrat's going to absolutely crush you guys if you're coming in on this angle, right? Because he just spams into the corridor, but can't really do much if we're not talking. Look to peek with our bubbles here. Just keep our energy maintained and going. We're spending a very long period of time not poking at all. When we were back here, we probably could... Oh, snap. I did not mean to go that far back. When we were right here, we probably could go for a bubble on one of these guys. Like, for example, Hog and May are walking out in the open right now. Right? Both of these guys are pretty visible. Maybe not Hog at the moment, but he's about to move, right? So we could go for a bubble on one of those guys, get some energy going in a moment here, right? Either or. We could also bubble, peek out this way. Wait a second for him to start shooting, like to see you, right? And then bubble, and then just walk back in here when we're done. We could walk top left and bubble, but we do this little footsie game where we kind of go top left, and then we're like, nah, right? And we come back, and then we sit here, and then we poke, right? So just inefficient. Make sure we're bubbling to a little bit faster here, using it more frequently, keeping up our energy. Right. When we're bubbling here, maybe wait a second for them to stop looking at Hog, because the thing is that when we're bubbling, when us and Hog are in two completely different directions, they have to split their attention to look at one of us. Now, this is completely fine if we were like in this like little corridor over here where they're looking straight at both of us, and any damage they do is hitting both of our bubbles. But here, like, they have to like, you'll notice that they have to choose, like, do we look at Hog, do we look at Zarya, right? So if Hog peeks first and they're all looking at Hog, then now there's a longer delay before they see us. Here we bubble maybe as too early, when we should be bubbling like a second later, so that we can wait until they like kind of acquire us as a target and start shooting at us, because they're not like the second that we peek the corner, we're not going to start getting shot at. They don't know we're there, right?
Yep.
And then we also back up too early before our bubble even goes away. All right, so we just want to make sure that we're going out, bubbling a little bit later, staying a little bit later. You have 400 HP. You're probably not going to die. Very unlikely. I would say almost certainly you're going to live there, right? Very unlikely that you're going to die. Just want to make sure we're peaking a little bit longer. Wait for him to go in and do something, and before we're bubbling him again, we're like, Sigma's just kind of, no one's there looking at him, right? There's we see that everyone just dropped from high ground. Sigma's not even looking at him, and Genji's not in there doing anything. So just again, another bad bubble. Really, like there hasn't been much at all so far. Like, so like if we just go through the other, so strengths and weaknesses, like awareness. I wouldn't say that we're like when it comes to awareness, there's a lot of different types of awareness, right? You have watching kill feed. So far, haven't really had much of a problem with that. You have your HUD. So far, haven't really had a problem with that. You have audio awareness. the one example I would think of audio awareness was just that we whipped around this all the McCree, so that was really good. We have in-game awarenesses of paying attention. I probably say the awareness on the awareness end. That's probably going to be the biggest thing to pay attention to with awareness, but this also kind of works with like this one is like kind of where it goes, like awareness goes hand in hand with bubble usage, is that our in-game awareness of where the enemy team is at and where our team is at is very, very poor, and then that
Yep.
results in bad bubbles, right?
Okay.
We don't pay attention to where they're looking, right? Because each player has their own body, right? And if Sigma's looking this direction, that's completely different than if he's looking this direction, right? And positioning of players is going to be very heavily affect your decision for bubbles. So we just want to make sure that we're looking at our teammates and looking at enemies and really, really paying attention to them, and that's going to allow us to hit better bubbles. So that awareness is probably pretty low. Besides that, you have like ultimate awareness, which we haven't really talked about, and if you're not going to be doing much team communicating, that's not really going to be very big of an issue to worry about. Moving on, we talked about some. I've only seen one ultimate, and then we held on to the second ult, so not really having an opinion on that yet. Positioning needs a bit of work. Bubbles obviously need a lot of work. And then the last one would just be mechanics, which mechanics I haven't really seen too much of a problem with. Like we hit our shots. I think sometimes we end up. I think sometimes we just end up left clicking when people are out of range, and when we should be right clicking. And that's maybe something we still need to get used to.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's not too terrible.
Ready for battle. You're going.
Right. The big thing is that like we're just constantly low energy. I probably say if I were to just give an average number off the top of my head, it'd be like around 40. Which the difference between 40 and 100 is a very, very massive difference, right? You're going to be doing a whole lot more when you have 100 energy than if you have 40 energy, and that's going to reflect in your. So when you have better bubbles, you do more tanking. When you have better bubbles, you get more energy. When you have more energy, you get more kills. You get more damage. When you get more damage, you get more ultimates. When you get more ultimates, it means that and more kills, right? Ultimates results kills, right? So you overall, and more energy means more kills, right? And when you get more kills, that means you're winning more fights. And when you're winning more fights, that means you're winning more games, right? So energy and bubbles is the most important thing on Zarya, right? The biggest part of her kit, because it's going to impact a very, very large amount of your gameplay, and we just are going to be lacking a lot on our ability to do things if we're not getting high energy and not getting good bubbles off.
Barriers on you. Go.
Alright, so we have 5 people in here. Alright, this is a real wacky fight. How did our May get up there?
Not really sure.
That's all you got.
Make sure that we're reloading whenever we have a lull in time.
Helden sterben nicht.
I think tracking does need work, though that is something that's not very teachable. It's something that you have to practice at, so it's less
Yeah.
me telling you go get good tracking, right? It's I can't really say you do this and now you get good tracking. It's more like you have to go and practice it, though I will link you a video where IDDQD talks about it. I'm just scrolling through real quick. I don't think I sent you this yet, so yeah, okay, I didn't. So I'll just get that for you real quick in a moment here. Alright, I just sent that to you. So in this video, he goes over a custom game mode, which of course this guy is an Overwatch League player, so he practices Overwatch like 8 to 12 hours a day. So you don't have to I think he does it for like an hour a day. You don't have to
Okay.
practice your aim for that much if you don't play that much, but especially if you like, the more and more time you play, the more and more time you can put into that. Like what you say you play like 3 hours, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
3 or 4 hours a day.
3 or 4
something
hours a
like
day,
that.
right? So if you're playing
Yeah.
that much, you can maybe do like 15, 30 minutes of that. Or the other thing to keep in mind is that you can just do that while you're in queue for a game. You can just while you're waiting to get into a game, you can do that to warm up for the day. And it's just a custom game mode that he uses to practice his tracking and his mechanics, and keep them fresh. The other thing is, would you say that you play like every single day?
I play most days, yeah.
Most days. Just if you just when it comes to getting rusty with mechanics, mechanics get rusty insanely fast. You can be gone from playing for one single day and have your mechanics be worse off because it just goes away very, very fast. So you have to constantly keep up the muscle memory. So what that means is
Yep.
that basically, even if you're busy, like if you're busy all day and you can't play, it'd probably still be a good idea to get on and play like at least like one free for all game or something like that, just like 10 minutes, right? That way you can keep your mechanics fresh and keep them all like on the same level as before, so that you don't deteriorate with your mechanics and your aim. Right. The other
Yep.
thing I'd probably say is if you don't already, or let me ask first, if you do you do a warm up before you start playing and hopping in the comp?
I normally play a round or two of quick play, and then I'll jump in, yeah.
Yep. So
And
that's
sometimes
good.
I do a bit of Kovac, yeah, for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I probably don't make your warm up too long because that will probably be worse off for you if you're doing because two quick play games. And do you do quick play and Kovac, like both of them?
I normally do one or the other
One
night.
or the other. All right. So yeah,
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes should be all it is, right? You don't want to put too much into it because if your quick play, like we talked about before, is in a very competitive environment, and to be honest, quick plays, like if you're playing too much quick play to start off, that can be almost hurting you because it ends up getting you used to an easy game, right?
Yep.
And you don't want that to happen.
No.
All right. We don't have a main tank. Be careful when you're just waltzing down main. Here we get absolutely shredded in like 0.5 seconds. All right. Make sure that you're not pushing when you don't have bubbles. Here, this is very winnable. Right now, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And we also have pretty close. I think we have closer spawns here than they do. This is pretty winnable. We just want to make sure that we're not rushing it. Here, we end up using both bubbles, and like we have discussed before, we do not want to be super aggressive when we don't have bubbles because bubbles are pretty good. Uh, there's a lot of different things that go into aggression, but bubbles are one of them, right? When we don't have bubbles, we can't be as aggressive because bubbles are a way that we can negate a lot of damage. So
Yep.
here, what we should be doing is sitting main. On top of that, our awareness looks like it's lacking a little bit because Sigma's kind of waltzing right next to us and we do not notice him at all, right? So we just want to make sure we're listening for that. Does Mercy also get off a res right next to us? Because I think Sigma's res. No, okay, no, Sigma was not res. Okay. Just want to make sure we're paying attention to him and we're not waltzing straight through main here because that results in us dying. Main is also probably not the place that we want to walk through. Most of the time, you're going to be better off trying to go up right side unless you have like a really brawly composition, which you guys are not on a brawl. I think a lot of this could also come down to team comp awareness, as that's another part of awareness that you probably are struggling with a little bit, is identifying team composition, and team comp dictates playstyle. You play completely differently if you're on this comp versus a brawl, right? Right now we are not on a brawl because we can't brawl, right? Now you do have a lot of brawl aspects, but you're really incapable of brawling, especially in comparison to their comp. Their comp is very much brawl heavy. We have a hog, so that kind of
Yeah.
ruins a lot of it. If we had a Reinhardt, we would be much more able to go in and brawl. But the fact that you do not have a Reinhardt means that we need to play, in comparison to their composition, we need to play more passive. They have a Ryan, they have a Junkrat, they have a Sigma, they have a Baptiste, and they have a McCree. Those are all pretty brawly characters. We have a Hog who is not a brawl, a Genji who is pretty brawly, right? So we're all brawl again besides our Hog, right? So we just ought to be careful because that kind of ruins it.
Bit uchi. Barrier activated. Deine
I don't know if there's much
Unfortunate.
there I could do with the tire. Yeah.
Only thing I would maybe say is that don't bubble the second you see it. We did bubble and it was a little like when we bubbled here, it was too far away to kill us. Right, we would have survived had we. So right here, the second we bubble, right, we bubble. If he exploded the tire this instant, it would not kill us. Right.
Okay. Yep.
It requires him a couple extra milliseconds before he gets within range to kill us, or maybe even 1 second to get within range to kill us. And that makes all the difference because it's also that amount of time that lets him see that we used bubble, right? So from his perspective, he sees, oh, Zarya just used bubble, let me wait this out. Other thing is make sure you're shooting at it. Oh wait, never mind, we do. Sorry, we just missed it. So maybe slightly early, but besides that, not much you could have done. Shoot at the ground to go faster. Okay, here bubble on the right. Bubble on the Baptiste was decent, right? But then bubble on ourselves didn't really do much because look at where we're bubbling, right? Are we really gonna be soaking up much damage in this room where only Reinhardt can see us and Reinhardt's not even in range of swinging at us?
Yep.
Not really. So we just want to make sure that, again, when we're bubbling, we're doing it when people can see us and shoot at us. And when they are seeing us and shooting at us.
I have your back. Barrier is on you. Go.
Right. Pretty good indication that we haven't really done anything yet is when we, or haven't really done much in a game, is when you're taking 3 minutes to charge an ultimate, because it takes almost that long to charge an ultimate just naturally, which means that we've done very, very little damage.
Yep.
So, like, for example, Baptiste, like, so we're at right now 10 minutes and 52 seconds, right? If we just go back to the start of the round, right? We just, like, track some of their ultimates, right? So we have, who gets their ultimate first on their team? Junkrat just used tire, right? So Junkrat uses tire, right, first. And then Baptiste uses window second. Oh, did they use window here? No, they just charge up windows super slowly. Alright, so the Baptiste did nothing. Alright, so they use tire. They use Valk. They use tire again, right? So they got 2 tires when we're at 67%. Right? And by the time that we are 85, he's like 34 to a next tire, right? So in the time that we've gotten 1 ult, we have people using their second ults, right, by now.
Yep.
So this is just really, really slow, which means that we're lacking on damage output, which means that we're probably also lacking in other areas as well, which affects damage output because positioning affects damage output, survivability affects damage output, bubbles affect damage output, right? So you just want to make sure that we're working on all those 3 things, right, as well as just our mechanics so that we can hit more shots and do more, because it just seems like we aren't doing much so far. When we bubble there, we kind of back up away from the ledge, which makes it so that they can't see us and shoot at us, right? Just make sure that we're peeking so that they can't, like when we're bubbling, we want to stay exactly where we are right now so that they can all shoot at us perfectly fine. But what ends up happening is we go and look at this from like the perspective of the McCree. All right, McCree goes to shoot at us, and we bubble and we back up away from the ledge. So now we're out of his line of sight, right? They can't even shoot at us. So we want to make sure that we are within their line of sight, because in that time because of that second that we're behind cover, it gives him the reaction time to be able to go, okay, let's not shoot at that, right? Now that's unfortunate. Junkrat booped us off there. Junkrat kind of rolled us. Alright, team is carrying us now.
Yep.
And we now have our first grab.
Objective A captured. New defense point. Objective B.
Get in there.
Weekend burst activated.
Heal up. Give me your best shot. Don't be shy. Hit me. Barrier on you.
Get in here.
Огонь по готовности.
Make sure that when we are... Oh, shit, never mind. We caught those two guys as well. Right. I think they kind of stepped into that one. Let's see. When we fire that, we got... When we fire it...
Огонь по готовности.
We fired at Reinhardt. Mercy's not in it. She walks into it. Baptiste walks into it. Okay, they both walked into it. So we got a little bit lucky there. Just make sure we're not just focusing the Reinhardt, because he's going to be the easiest thing to pocket, because he has 2 shields, 500 HP, 2 pockets, and a lamp. Right, easiest target to pocket, like to focus. Right here, we don't get the supports unless they walk into it, which they do. So just make sure that we're not just grabbing the tank, but we're trying to purposefully focus the supports or the DPS or anything, right, that are a little bit easier to kill, not just Reinhardt. Okay, a lot of bad bubbles, which means that we're in the middle of this fight at 4 energy, right?
You're caught. I am taking you.
Make sure you're not holding down your beam if there's nothing to shoot at. This wastes time, right? And it means that we could be doing something else. Again, we kind of do that again, where we're holding it down on nothing. Okay, we're high energy. All right. Skip.
Defend objective A.
Barrier is on
Nope,
you.
first bubbles come out a lot earlier. We just learned from our mistakes of last round, and we actually did it good this time, right? Just want to make sure that it's consistent. So those were good
Yep.
bubbles. We used it as soon as they turned the corner, as soon as we saw them start to shoot, and we got 60 energy as a result in comparison to like the, I don't know what we get like last time, like 0 or
Not much.
0 to 20 or something like that. Right.
Something like that, yeah.
Up the tempo.
A speedy recovery. Bring it.
You remember the reason what we use right clicks for?
To boot people, is that what you mean, or?
What in what situations is right click going to be used over left click?
I normally do it when I think they're out of range, but that's what I normally do.
So you right click when they're out of range, and maybe I never went over this with you, but you right click when they're out of range, and when they're low HP, you can right click to burst them down. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, yep.
So here, right clicking this doesn't really do much because it's just within our range, perfectly fine. And also we see that they're all running away, so breaking this bubble really doesn't even do anything at all. This is just kind of wasting time, where we could be looking to go and help with Ball or Doomfist, or looks like they're all coming to main, right? So we're kind of lagging behind a little bit because we're not being aware of what they're doing. So here we end up sticking around too long on this side of the map, shooting at bubble, and we're also just right clicking it instead of left clicking. Okay, because you're lagging over there for so long, we're now out of position to where, like, you look at where we are in comparison to our team. When they are on a dive composition, we want to make sure that we're all grouped up together, right? They have a Ball who is dive, Mercy who is dive, Echo who is dive, Monkey who is dive, Zenyatta who is dive, Doomfist who is dive. They're on a complete 6-man dive, right? And when they are like that, we want to make sure with our team, if we're off on our own, that means that they can all jump on us and they can bubble us off, right? And now we're outside of range of healing. We're unable to get supported by our team. And on top of that, if we're off on our own, these guys get dove, and now they're outside of our range of our bubbles and our protection, right? So we want to group up all in a little ball so that when they dive in, they're facing all of you together, not one of you separately.
Yep.
So again, being aware of team compositions and changing your playstyle accordingly.
Double. 30 seconds remaining.
a little bit better at bubbles, which is ironic because usually dive is like one of the hardest compositions to get energy against. But I guess the Echo is probably going to be the easiest one to get energy from.
Yeah.
ضربة معلم.
10 seconds remaining.
Our time. Stop it. Leave and now. Barriers on you. Go. Just a scratch. Maximum charge.
Okay. Two different problems here. First off, we're left clicking when Echo's outside of our range. If left click just barely, right, we're just doing nothing here because you can see that, right? We're just kind of tracking her and being just out of range. And then the second that she drops into our range, we end up reloading when we still have 60 ammo left. So make sure we're not reloading when we can actively be shooting at stuff. We reload when we have a lull in time where we cannot be shooting at stuff, and there's just reloading would be the most efficient thing to do. Here we could be shooting at Echo because she does drop within our beam range, right? Because her flight runs out and she drops. But that's the second that we reload and look away at the same time. Like, look how close she is to you now, right? She just dropped in super
Yeah.
close to you. We'd be able to beam her down so easily if we just weren't reloading here. The other thing is that in a moment here, we're going to really screw up our positioning and run kind of straight on the open, right? We're not using cover at all. This makes us super easy to melt and kill, right? We don't have any cover usage. Good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover. And we're also isolating ourselves from our team once again, right? Running off on our own. Don't shoot at something if they're getting pocketed. So instead of shooting at Zenyatta, you shoot at Mercy, who's going to be easier to kill. Zenyatta being pocketed is going to be harder to kill than a Mercy who's not being pocketed, right? Same thing if Mercy was healing Echo. Same thing if Mercy was healing the Doomfist, right? We shoot at the Mercy first because she's the easiest thing to kill unless your team is focusing something else, right? Now, this results in us getting dead, and then we're just going to go and do a wrap-up here.
Yeah.
Quick review. So a lot of same notes that we touched on last time, but we'll do a review anyways here. So starting with our abilities or with our bubbles, right? Probably the biggest thing we're going to talk about here is our bubble usage, with being like the number 2 is awareness. But bubbles, very obviously, we're very inconsistent, right? We just really, like, half the time they were fantastic, half the time we just got nothing out of them. And when you're a half and half ratio, that's not really great, right? It's great that you're doing great in sometimes, but like if you're only getting good bubbles half the time, that's a lot worse than if you're getting good bubbles like 60% of the time, or if you're getting good bubbles 70% of the time, good bubbles 80% of the time, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting much more consistent with that, so that we're getting bubbles good all the time, which very heavily impacts all parts of our kit. So make sure a couple different things, right? Make sure that when we're using bubbles, we're making it very easy for people to see us. So we're presenting ourselves, right? Rather than kind of being like a little shy on the corner here, we want to make sure we're making it super easy, out in the open, no cover, no hiding on the high ground. We want to make it so that when we bubble, they can shoot us very easily. We also don't want to bubble. We don't want to bubble the second we peek out. We want to give them a second to say, oh yeah, Zarya is there, right? Because they're not going to be, like, no one has lightning fast reflexes, maybe, like, even up at like GM level where like someone peeks the corner and then all of a sudden they're like, wee, right? They're not aimbotting, right? So it's going to take them a second to find you and shoot at you, right? So peek the corner, wait a second, bubble, don't back off halfway through the bubble because then you waste half of it. So make sure you're staying here for the full duration unless you feel like your life is in danger, which, unless like you're in the middle, they have like a bastion, or you're in the middle of getting like shredded, or you're in 6 people, like most of the time it's not going to be in danger, right? If we're just peeking for energy, right?
Yep.
Make sure that we can attract their attention as well by shooting at them. You don't want to just stand still while you're peeking. Also, just make the big ones is make sure that you're paying attention to your surroundings, which comes in with awareness. Pay attention to where enemies are at. Pay attention to where your teammates are at, so that we're bubbling when enemies are looking at us or our teammates and shooting at us or our teammates, right? So we want to, when it's 3 or more people looking at you and shooting at you, or if it's like a very high burst target, especially if it's projectile, right? Junkrat, Junkrat's easy, Pharah's easy, Bastion's easy, Hanzo's easy, Echo's easy, right? Because it's all a bunch of spam damage that's very easy to catch, right? Torbjorn's decently easy. Other than that, that's most of the ones that are really good for spamming, right? There's a few tanks as well, right? Ryan Fire Strikes are easy. Sigma and Hog can do some easy damage to soak up. Right, we just want to make sure we're doing it when we know damage is coming in, right? A lot of times you end up bubbling when like there's absolutely no way that anybody's looking at us, and nobody looks like they're looking at us, right? So we just want to make sure we're paying attention. All right, now moving on. Grab. We charged it very, very slowly, so we didn't get much of them off. We're gonna be charging that much more and getting a lot more off if we're doing more damage and shooting more things, as well as using bubbles better. It also just seems like we weren't really shooting at much, so actions per minute probably would come in there. But on the grab end, just make sure you're using it. And you're not holding on to it, right? Especially like at the very end where we held on to it and we didn't end up using it before the round ended. Besides that, honestly, not too much problem with our grab. I think grab is pretty decent. Now, moving on to our mechanics. Just make sure you're practicing because I'd probably say your mechanics are pretty average, though when it comes to tracking, there's like not much to tell you about. It's not really something you can learn. You have crosshair placement, but tracking isn't really crosshair placement. So crosshair placement would be what we would talk about if like you're playing a character that hits headshots or actually requires you to predict where people are going to be. But for the most part, understand the difference between your left click and your right click, right? Left click is 15 meters. This is outside of range. This is inside of range. Make sure right clicking when you're not. Right click when people are low HP, right? Top of that, make sure that you are also just upping your actions per minute. So actions per minute is how much stuff are we doing, right? When you're going down to like bronze, people do nothing. With each minute, they just kind of waltz around. They're like, this game is pretty, right? They don't really do much, right? But you get into GM and some people are doing stuff all the time because they are efficient with their time and they maximize every single second, right? So with us, it just feels like it's not just the fact that we're low energy, but also that we're not really damaging as much as we should be. So just make sure we're actively looking to be doing more things, specifically just pumping out damage every single second of the day, or every single second of the game, right? Now, but to be honest, mechanics isn't one of the bigger things you need to work with. Positioning resulted in a ton of problems, right? We ended up dying a few times because we went too far forwards. Identify where your team comp is and play adjust accordingly. Make sure you're not getting too aggro when you don't have a main tank. On top of that, just with your positioning, make sure you're respecting cover usage still, right? Good positioning is the usage of cover, right? Where we can do this and they can't see us, right? But bad positioning is where we leave cover and walk out into the open, right? The absence of cover. Besides that, make sure you're not getting too aggro and running into people. Besides that, I don't know, I wouldn't aggression. I would put this in aggression, not really in positioning, but just remember to gauge your aggression off of like the composition you're working with, the bubble. Do you have bubbles or not? Because aggression was also another one that's kind of just killing us. So maybe we do that together as positioning and aggression. So make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings so we can adjust our aggression accordingly, because we ended up getting way too aggressive at certain points and then dying as a result. Now, make sure there are bubbles as well. I forgot to mention this, but just make sure using them in between fights, right, and maintaining energies in between every fight so you come into the next fight with energy. And then finally, on to awareness, right? So awareness, make sure that you are paying attention to the different parts of your kit. So HUD, not too much of a problem. Watching ultimates, we didn't really talk about ults, so not too much of a problem. Kill feed, not too much of a problem. We didn't ult in bad fights, and we paid decently enough attention to that. The big issues, the big two parts of awareness are where we come into knowing where players are at. So knowing where the enemy team is at, knowing where our team is at. Right, we don't want to just do a walk around with a slow pan, and we want to be aware of what's happening around us. So look left, look right, turn around, do a 360 once in a while, right? Look up if there's high grounds or balls above us, right? Audio awareness was the other one that we don't really need to work too much on. So just pay attention to where people are positioned, right? On top of that, pay attention to the team comps you're working with, as we were working with a team comp that probably meant that we needed to be a little bit more passive because we didn't have a main tank for like both rounds. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to team comp and adjusting accordingly. Team comp dictates play style. All right,
Yep.
so now we've talked about all that stuff. Main points. Number 1 is going to be our bubbles, as that resulted in it affected a whole lot of other areas of our gameplay. Number 2, we will put at, let's see, what are we going to put number 2 at? I'm probably going to put number 2 at awareness, because awareness affected a whole lot of different parts of our gameplay, because awareness, like, even though you end up making a lot of mistakes with positioning and aggression and positioning is based off of awareness. You are not able to correctly make decisions if you don't know what's happening around you. You can't choose to be passive if you don't see that you don't have a main tank, right? So you need to be able to see we don't have a main tank to choose to play passive, so therefore make sure you're practicing your awareness, right? Number 3 then comes in at positioning and aggression. Those two kind of together. Number 4 is going to come in at probably say mechanics, and then number 5 is your ultimate usage. I didn't see many of them, but ones I did see, they were pretty decent. We had good timing with them, and we didn't hold on to them, and we placed them pretty decently. Just make sure with your ults as well that you're focusing the supports and the DPS, not just the one Reinhardt, right?
Yep.
So, any questions on anything we've gone over?
No, all good, thanks, man. I'll go through my notes and go from there.
All right. Well, you